Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine this. You are exactly 24 hours from being thrown out of your apartment. You're completely broke and your back is against the wall. Then, walking home in the rain, you find this: a lost wallet with exactly $1,000 cash inside and the owner's ID. It's the exact amount you need to pay your rent. Nobody's watching. What do you do? Do you keep it to save yourself, or do you do the right thing? Today, we're diving into a gripping story about a massive moral dilemma while learning some powerful English idioms you can use in real life. Let's find out what Leo chose to do. The rain in the city didn't just fall. It felt like it was punishing the pavement. Leo stood under the awning of a closed grocery store, staring down at the piece of paper crumpled in his fist. It was a final notice from his landlord, printed in a cold, aggressive red ink. He needed exactly $1,000 by tomorrow morning, or he would be evicted. He was completely broke, and his back was against the wall. Every door he had knocked on for help had been shut in his face. He pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders and stepped out into the downpour. The streetlights flickered, casting long, shivering shadows across the wet asphalt. Leo walked with his head down, trying to numb his mind against the panic rising in his chest. How had things gotten this bad? Then his foot kicked something solid. He paused. Resting against the curb, half soaked in a puddle, was a thick, dark brown leather object. Leo knelt down and scooped it up. It was heavy, packed tight with content. His fingers traced the smooth leather as he hurried into the shelter of a nearby alleyway. With shaking hands, Leo unzipped the main compartment. His breath caught in his throat. Neatly tucked inside was a thick stack of crisp green bills. He didn't even need to count them to know it was a fortune. Right behind the cash was a driver's license featuring the face of an older man. Leo looked from the money to the rain-slicked street. The clock was ticking. Leo burst through the door of his apartment, dripping wet and shivering. The kitchen was freezing, but he barely noticed the cold as he threw the wet leather wallet onto the wooden table. He peeled off his soaked jacket, his eyes glued to the object resting under the dim overhead light. With a trembling hand, he pulled out the neat stack of money and laid the bills out across the table. 1, 2, 3. He counted 10 crisp $100 bills. Exactly $1,000. It was the precise amount written on the red eviction notice sitting on his counter. Leo stared at the money, feeling a strange mix of absolute relief and terrifying guilt. This sudden windfall could instantly solve his biggest problem and wipe his slate clean with his landlord. He picked up the wallet again to look at the driver's license. The name on the card read Arthur Vance, a man with kind eyes and gray hair who lived just a few blocks away. Leo's conscience began to heavy on him as he looked at Arthur's smiling face. "This isn't my money," Leo whispered to the empty room, his voice sounding hollow. But then he looked back at the eviction notice and the panic returned. If he gave the wallet back, he would be homeless by tomorrow afternoon. If he kept it, an innocent older man would lose a massive amount of cash. Leo sat down at the table, buried his face in his hands, and trapped himself in the silence of the night. The money sat between his fingers, waiting for a decision. The heavy silence of the kitchen was shattered by 3 loud, aggressive thuds on the front door. Leo jumped out of his chair, his heart hammering violently against his ribs. He knew that knock all too well. Mr. Roper, his strict and impatient landlord, had arrived earlier than expected. In a frantic panic, Leo swept the $100 bills off the table and shoved them back into the leather wallet. He slid the wallet deep into his front jeans pocket, just as another round of pounding shook the doorframe. Leo took a deep breath, tried to compose his face, and pulled the door open. Mr. Roper stood in the hallway, wearing a heavy winter coat and holding a clipboard with a scowl. "I'm here for the past due rent, Leo," the landlord said, without even saying hello. "The deadline is tomorrow morning, but I'm collecting tonight to save myself a trip." Leo felt the heavy lump of Arthur Vance's wallet pressing against his thigh, practically burning through the fabric of his jeans. The pressure was mounting so intensely that Leo felt dizzy. "I don't have the cash on me right this second, Mr. Roper," Leo lied, his voice wavering slightly. "But I promise you I will have the full amount for you by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." Mr. Roper narrowed his eyes, examining Leo's nervous expression with deep suspicion. "You've been a good tenant, Leo, but business is business," the landlord warned, pointing a pen at him. "No more extensions. If the cash isn't in my hand tomorrow, you need to pack your bags and clear out." Leo nodded quickly, promising again and again until Mr. Roper finally turned and walked down the hall. Leo closed the door, leaned his back against it, and slid down to the floor. He had managed to buy some time, but the clock was officially ticking down to his ruin. Leo sat back down at the kitchen table, the adrenaline still pumping through his veins. He pulled the wallet out of his pocket and stared at the driver's license once more. "Who are you, Arthur Vance?" Leo muttered to himself, pulling out his smartphone. He opened a search engine and typed the old man's name into the search bar, hoping to find a clue about who he was. Within a few seconds, several social media profiles and local business listings popped up on the screen. Leo clicked on a link and discovered that Arthur's digital footprint led straight to a neighborhood landmark. Arthur was the owner of Vance's Sweet Treats, a small, traditional bakery located just 4 blocks away. Leo scrolled through the bakery's page and felt a heavy knot form in his stomach. The business was clearly struggling, with recent posts mentioning rising ingredient costs and broken kitchen equipment. There was a photo of Arthur standing proudly in front of his ovens, wearing a flour-dusted apron and a tired smile. Leo realized that the $1,000 inside the wallet definitely wasn't just pocket change to this man. It was very likely the bakery's weekly earnings, or perhaps the money needed to pay for crucial repairs. If Leo kept the cash to save his own apartment, he might destroy the livelihood of an elderly man who worked hard every day. He looked at the crisp bills, then back at the photo of the smiling baker on his phone screen. The easy relief he had felt earlier completely vanished, replaced by a deep sense of shame. He wasn't just stealing from a faceless stranger anymore. He was stealing from Arthur. Leo leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling as the moral weight of his situation grew heavier. The choice was no longer just about paying rent. It was about what kind of person he wanted to be. Leo tossed his phone onto the table, unable to look at Arthur's smiling face any longer. He began pacing up and down the narrow length of his kitchen, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He needed to find a way to live with himself, so he began to rationalize the situation in his mind. "Arthur owns a business," Leo told himself out loud, trying to make the words sound convincing. "He has assets, he has inventory, and he probably has insurance for lost property." He looked around his tiny, dark apartment, feeling a bitter wave of self-pity wash over him. "What do I have? Nothing. If I get evicted tomorrow, I will be out on the freezing streets with nowhere to go." He argued with his own conscience, convincing himself that his survival was more important than a small business's temporary loss. He told himself that he was just borrowing the money and that he would pay Arthur back as soon as he found a better job. But deep down, Leo knew he was just making excuses to cover up a selfish choice. He was trying to turn a blind eye to his own morals, but his heart refused to cooperate. He finally turned off the kitchen light and went to bed, leaving the wallet hidden inside the kitchen drawer. He lay awake for hours in the dark, staring up at the ceiling while the rain continued to beat against his window. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the red eviction notice, followed immediately by Arthur's kind, tired face. The mattress felt like stone, and the blanket offered no warmth against the cold guilt growing inside him. He realized that keeping the money might save his home, but it would completely destroy his peace of mind. When the first gray light of dawn began to creak through the blinds, Leo still hadn't slept a single wink. The deadline was only 3 hours away, and his soul was completely exhausted from the fight. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a sharp light across the kitchen table where the wallet sat. Leo looked at the clock on the wall. It was 7 in the morning, and the final deadline was rapidly approaching. He could not carry the weight of the guilt through another hour, knowing what he had to do. He opened his phone, pulled up the business page for the bakery, and found the contact number listed at the bottom. With a deep breath to steady his nerves, Leo picked up his phone and dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, each ring sounding like a thunderclap in the quiet apartment. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Arthur asked, his voice sounding anxious and stressed. "Hello, Mr. Vance. This is Leo, and I think I found something on the street last night that belongs to you." There was a sudden sharp gasp on the other line, followed by the sound of something dropping on a counter. "My wallet?" Arthur whispered, his voice cracking with a sudden wave of hope. "The black leather one? Is everything still inside it?" "Yes, sir. Everything is exactly how you left it," Leo replied, feeling an instant lift in his chest. "Oh, thank goodness, you have no idea what that means to me," Arthur breathed, sounding like he might weep with relief. They quickly arranged a meeting at the bakery in 30 minutes so Leo could return the property safely. Leo hung up the phone, picked up the wallet from the drawer, and felt a strange sense of peace return to him. He still didn't have his rent money, but as he walked out the door, he knew he was doing the right thing. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly as Leo stepped inside, the warm scent of cinnamon and fresh bread hitting him instantly. Arthur Vance was standing behind the glass counter, his hands trembling as he wiped down the surface with a white towel. When Arthur looked up and saw Leo holding the dark brown leather wallet, the old man's eyes widened with pure shock. Leo walked over to the counter and gently handed over the wallet, placing it directly into Arthur's waiting palms. Arthur clutched the leather tight against his chest, closing his eyes for a long moment as a look of profound relief washed over his face. "I can't thank you enough, young man," Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion as he was moved to tears. Arthur opened the zipper and quickly counted the cash, finding all 10 of the $100 bills perfectly intact. "You have no idea what you've just saved," Arthur whispered, looking at Leo with immense gratitude. "This money wasn't for supplies. It was the weekly wages for my 3 bakery assistants. If I had lost this, I wouldn't have been able to pay them, and their families would have faced severe hardship this month." Leo listened to the old man's words, a cold shiver running down his spine as he realized the truth. If he had kept that cash to solve his own problems, 3 innocent families would have suffered the consequences. The guilt that had been crushing Leo's chest for the past 12 hours finally dissolved into a feeling of absolute clarity. He had been on the very brink of making a terrible mistake, but seeing Arthur's joy made every difficult moment worth it. "I'm just glad it found its way back to you, Mr. Vance," Leo said softly, giving the baker a genuine smile. Arthur wiped his eyes, looked at Leo's damp jacket and tired face, and realized there was more to this young man's story. "Tell me, Leo," Arthur asked kindly, leaning forward on the counter. "An honest person like you deserves a proper thank you. How can I repay you for what you've done today?" Arthur pulled 2 of the $100 bills from the stack and held them out toward Leo with a warm smile. "Please, take this as a reward for your honesty," Arthur insisted, pushing the money closer. Leo looked at the bills, knowing they would instantly solve his emergency, but he gently shook his head and refused the money. "I can't accept that, Mr. Vance," Leo said softly, his voice steady despite the panic about his apartment. "You need that money for your staff, and I couldn't take a reward just for doing the right thing." Arthur lowered his hand, staring at Leo with a mixture of surprise and deep respect for his incredible integrity. "Not many young people would walk away from cash when they clearly look like they've had a rough night," Arthur observed, noticing Leo's pale face. Arthur placed the wallet on the counter and poured Leo a hot cup of black coffee, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Talk to me, Leo," Arthur said gently. "An honest man who turns down money usually has a very good reason. What's going on?" Leo hesitated for a moment, but the warmth of the bakery and Arthur's kind eyes made him open up about his situation. He explained everything: the final notice, the exact $1,000 debt, and the deadline that was now less than 2 hours away. Arthur listened intently, nodding slowly as Leo confessed how close he had come to keeping the wallet out of pure desperation. "You were desperate, yet you still chose the harder path," Arthur said, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "I respect that more than you know, and I happen to need someone exactly like you." Arthur explained that his weekend delivery driver had just quit, leaving the bakery struggling to get orders to local cafes. "It's a permanent part-time job, and I pay a fair wage," Arthur offered, leaning forward with a bright smile. "I need someone I can trust completely with my products and my earnings, and I already know I can trust you." Leo stared at the older man, a sudden burst of hope lighting up his chest as he realized his honesty had opened a brand new door. He eagerly accepted the position, shaking Arthur's hand as they quickly signed a simple employment agreement on a piece of notebook paper. He still had to face his landlord in 1 hour, but for the first time in weeks, Leo felt like he actually had a fighting chance. Leo walked back to his apartment building, the cold morning wind biting his face as the clock chimed exactly 9. He could see Mr. Roper standing by the front entrance, pacing back and forth with his clipboard in hand. Leo's stomach did a nervous flip, but he took a deep breath, adjusted his shoulders, and walked forward to face the music. "You're right on time, Leo," Mr. Roper said coldly, stepping into his path. "Do you have the $1,000 cash, or should I go get the eviction paperwork?" Leo looked his landlord directly in the eyes and confessed the absolute truth about everything that had happened. He explained finding the wallet, the intense temptation to use the cash for his rent, and his final decision to return it to Arthur Vance. Mr. Roper listened in stunned silence, his hard expression shifting into disbelief as Leo finished his story. "So you're telling me you had the exact cash in your hands and you just gave it away?" Mr. Roper asked, shaking his head. "I did, because it wasn't mine to keep," Leo replied firmly, pulling the folded notebook paper out of his pocket. But I didn't come back empty-handed. I found a new part-time job at the bakery, and I start this weekend." Leo handed the signed employment agreement to his landlord, showing him the guaranteed weekly wages written on the paper. "I don't have the cash today, but with this job, I am absolutely good for the money," Leo promised. "I just need a 1-week extension to get my first paycheck, and I will pay you every single dollar I owe." Mr. Roper stared down at the handwritten contract, examining Arthur's signature with a quiet, thoughtful frown. The strict landlord was silent for what felt like an eternity, weighing Leo's honesty against his usual strict rules. "In all my years as a landlord, nobody has ever given me an excuse like this," Mr. Roper finally muttered, lowering the paper. He looked at Leo's determined face, realizing that an honest tenant who works hard is much better than an empty apartment. Mr. Roper let out a long sigh, tapped his clipboard against his leg, and finally nodded. "1 week, Leo," the landlord said, his voice softer than usual as he granted the extension. "I respect a man who keeps his word and does the right thing. Don't make me regret this." Leo felt a massive weight lift off his shoulders, thanking Mr. Roper repeatedly as the landlord walked away. A month passed quickly, and Leo's life underwent a complete transformation as he worked hard to change his situation. He spent his weekdays at his regular job and his weekends handling the bustling deliveries for Vance's Sweet Treats. It wasn't easy, but Leo managed to balance his responsibilities perfectly, never missing a single shift or delivery deadline. His rent was now fully paid on the 1st of every month, and Mr. Roper even smiled whenever they passed each other in the hallway. More than just a job, Leo had formed a deep, meaningful bond with Arthur, who treated him like a member of his own family. They often sat together at the kitchen table after the bakery closed, sharing a cup of coffee and talking about life. One quiet evening, Leo looked down at his paycheck, realizing he finally had a small savings account growing for the future. He smiled, remembering that cold, rainy night when he had been so close to making a choice that would have ruined his integrity. Doing the right thing seemed like the hardest path at the time, but it had actually saved him from a much darker future. That lost wallet hadn't just been a test of his morals, it was the unexpected catalyst that paved the way for his own stability. Leo closed his ledger, feeling a deep sense of pride in his heart as he looked forward to the bright days ahead. Leo's story shows us that sometimes the hardest choices pave the way for the best outcomes. If he had kept that $1,000, he might have paid his rent for 1 month, but he would have lost his peace of mind, and he never would have found a permanent solution to his problems. By choosing integrity, he didn't just save Arthur's bakery, he saved himself. It's a powerful reminder that doing the right thing is always good for the money in the long run. Now I want to hear from you. Put yourself in Leo's shoes. If you were 24 hours away from eviction and found that wallet, what would you honestly do? Leave your answers in the comments below using at least one of today's new vocabulary words. And you can find all the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your real-life English with powerful narratives, make sure to hit that subscribe button and smash the like sign. Thank you for watching. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.